We're live. We're also waiting until the official start time, so we'll just juggle in the meantime. I'm going to leave it to Liz to do the juggling this time.
Thanks, Eric.
Here you go. I hope you learned something.
All right, come on, let's do it. Well, that was fun. Okay.
That doesn't mean you learned anything. It means you didn't learn that.
Great.
I'm trying to make sure that it's actually this microphone.
Oh, it looks like we're going fine.
Nope, not this
Okay.
I think this should be the right microphone. Hopefully this is working. This is my volume
David
here,
sees
yes.
and hear us. We're good. Okay,
Okay.
Great. Glad to know you can hear and see and hear us. Let's get started, Eric.
Okay. So thank you for coming to this final live event for the course, and thanks for all your participation all along. I'll also say that for those of you who are seeing this live event and aren't quite done yet, there is still time to finish the course. We do leave things open. Things will slow down after a little while, but the course is left open for a while, so please feel free to finish up your work over the coming weeks. The first comment that I had actually, before I get into the specifics of some of the presentations that people submitted, was actually the topic tags that we had. So if you look in the course forums on the right-hand side, you'll see a list of topic tags. And these are created by all of you who have posted in the forums and used tags. And what the interesting thing is, there's certain things like introduction and learning, which are probably, one would expect that those things would come up as tags.
Shocking.
And we have some nice things like collaboration and constructionism and assessment and programming and logo, all the things we mentioned in the videos. But what's actually reflected that I want to talk about now, and I'll talk about in a couple of the presentations, is adult learning and adult education, which were big themes here. And I think that goes to show that I think that there's just not enough people who are sort of working in this domain. There's big demands for adult education, adult learning, whether that's sort of retraining people or on-the-job training or literacy training, as we'll be talking about, citizenship. So there's so many needs for adult learners that are not being satisfied now, and it's really interesting to see all the discussion going on within that space. And we'll see some of that going on in the presentations that were presented to us and that we'll be talking about today. So the first one that I'll talk about.
Oh, before we get started, some logistics. You'll notice that there are links to the presentations we'll be talking about today in the description underneath the YouTube video. So if you look at the video window underneath, there's some information about the live event, and you'll see there's links. So please use those links so you can follow along as we talk about the presentations.
Great. So the first one that I will talk about is from CU Cloud. And it is a game called Calistem. And Calistem is a game for middle school students. And part of the interesting thing here was why this particular audience and why this particular project was chosen. And the sort of space is like in middle school, in the middle grades, you're sort of in this weird space between the sort of playful, fun space of elementary school and the sort of more serious sort of disciplinary focused space of high school, where people are more mature and they can sort of focus on their time. And it's sort of, there's this weird middle school space, and I say this as a parent of a middle school student right now. So so this definitely resonated with me. And the idea was to sort of support some of their both learning, but really about their identity within this space. And it's for maybe for kids who also at this point in time, they're the ones who sort of start to ignore their parents. Or have parents who maybe haven't been able to advise them. Maybe they're students who have parents who haven't gone to college before and who aren't sort of prepared to advise them in that sense. So it's about developing their sort of skills and their grit in that space of sort of thinking about what they want to do and finding pathways to doing that. And the basic premise here is that it's a mobile game, and the mobile game sort of combines some sort of role playing with sort of this training that's going on in this space.
Yeah, so a few more things to add, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think we've got Pierre-André with us. Bonjour, good to see you. That's great. We are glad that you could join us for the live event. So just a few things to add. We thought it was nice that Pierre-André had some relatives that he knew who were teachers and child psychologists, so he's thought about this issue and gotten their input that this is really a problem. One thing that was neat about this game is that students were able to play with identity. They could sort of take on an identity different from theirs in the game. This is something I know that we're interested to see in various playful learning experiences. And that this game really takes on a pretty serious challenge. Fostering socio-emotional development is not easy, and we appreciate that you took it on.
The other thing we'll talk about here is the
assessment section, or
yeah. Well, so in general, so there's a nice short video that you'll see if you go to this post, but there's also quite a much more extensive document that compiles a lot of the pieces along the way in terms of the use case and the product pitch, as well as research questions and assessment. And so I'll scroll down to that assessment space here.
Are you screen sharing right now?
Nope.
Okay, that's
but I
fine.
can.
Yeah, I think maybe for that section,
Yeah,
might be good. Perfect. Yeah, this one. Yep.
Good, perfect. Okay, so you can see here, this is the assessment section of CalSTEM. And there's really nice sort of definition of goals for the user, how it's going to be measured, and then some comments around that thing. So really clear goals about being more curious, developing or helping to find passions, learning to ask for help, being more resilient, thinking about ways that you can sort of learn about how they might be more resilient. Are they coming back again and again? Are they completing things? How does that change over time? And nice comments about thinking about how to actually take a look at some of the data that's coming through this platform to help understand whether they're meeting these goals or not. So that's a comment here that it's using some evidence-centered design principles to think about that. So really nice job with that.
That's great.
There's a mock-up view as well. I wanted to point out the Easter egg.
Yeah, good point.
The Easter egg for the origin of the word CalSTEM coming from the Greek word kaliste. I'm not going to pronounce that correctly. Which roughly translated means most beautiful, and STEM, which is the acronym that we use for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So nice job on the naming there as well.
One more thing before we leave this presentation. Do you mind scrolling up a little bit, Eric? So under the upkeep, sorry, one more time. A few words about the funding and business model. I appreciated that Pierre-André mentioned that there's the potential of the system collecting highly personal data. This is one thing that's really important, and how do we deal with data of minors and that sort of stuff? Yeah,
and the idea here is that this should probably be a nonprofit that's maintaining this, because we rightfully so have a lot of caution about private companies that might be private for-profit companies that are handling the personal data of young students.
Great.
I'll come back to my. Okay, now you should be seeing us again. So next on our list is coming up here.
Great.
Kay Dunn. Whoops. Kay Dunn, who has a pitch about new citizen education. And the idea here is to sort of address the high need for, particularly for U.S. citizens, people who want to become U.S. citizens, and the training that they need to go through to become U.S. citizens, which is not particularly interesting, or one would argue maybe even effective training for new U.S. citizens. So the idea here is to think about new ways that you can engage these people, and it builds on a lot of, she cited some of the iCivics work that goes on in this space. So there's some sort of foundational work in this space. That's some of the work that Filament Games and Sandra Jane O'Connor's foundation has done in iCivics. So there's some foundation upon that. I'll also note that there was a game. This is another country, sort of another goal. But there was some colleagues I worked with in Singapore a number of years ago who created a game called Statecraft, which was a mobile game for middle school kids to sort of learn citizenship. But it was really about some of these same goals that are here. So it's something that I think that people have seen a need for in other contexts as well. So the idea here is that there'll be a platform where people can sort of learn about these different sorts of things that you'll need, and it's really well outlined here in terms of what the kinds of things that you need to learn are: civil rights, criminal justice, education. And people will even be able to specialize in those areas. So there's some sort of sense of choice as you're learning in this environment, which is really important for a lot of learners. And it's really geared towards the adult audience. I think that this is aiming for. That it's unlike iCivics, which is really for school kids. This is really aiming at adults and the needs of those adult learners.
Right. So a few more things on this. So this project is by Janice Tolman. Janice, we really got a good idea of sort of your intellectual journey on this project, and also various sources that influenced you, and that was very helpful. And we understand that this is really about skill building rather than just say testing. Do you know these things? It's more than that. I personally wanted to know a little bit more about the simulations and the actual content. So we read the use case scenario, but we wanted to know, we understand what sort of skills this will cover, but I wanted to know more about the learner experience particularly.
Yeah, and I'd say for a lot of these, I think it's important to think about what the next steps are. And I would say that would be a next step, is to really think about what this experience looks like. And I'll give a plug for 11, 126, and 127, which are coming up.
Right.
So it's a chance to sort of expand and really think deeply about if the interest is games. 11, 126 focuses on games, and 11, 127 on educational games. It's a chance to sort of really hone that model and really develop it well. But regardless of whether you pursue that or not, I think really thinking about what it looks like. Someone sits down and does this. What does it really look like? Forget about how the technology works. If that may not be the place to start. It's really about draw a screen. What does it look like? Write a user scenario for like the person sits down at the game and what are they doing in this particular space. It might be a 5-minute session, so it doesn't need to be a really lengthy document, but it gives someone a deeper sense of really specifically what are you doing at any one point in time. I think you've done a really great job of what somebody does over time, because this is going to take weeks or months or potentially years. But you want to sort of get that detailed view of what they're doing, in any one sort of 5-minute segment.
That's great. Great. So should we move on to our next presentation?
Next presentation. Staying in adult ed.
Yeah, we're staying in adult ed. So this is the American Dream Reading Program by Sachiko Oates, who I believe has joined us right now for the live event. Hey. Great. Yep, she's there. So
I'll do a little screen sharing so people can at least see the.
Yeah, let's do some screen sharing on that one. She did a really nice job with the Prezi.
Which you should be seeing now. I'll just display like 20 seconds of it.
Plus, this is also the kind of Prezi where you don't get seasick, right?
Yes.
Zooming all over the place.
So this is another project focused on adult learners, and in this case, the adult learners are ESL learners. So again, it's focusing on a high needs population. In this case, similar to the other population of people seeking U.S. citizenship, immigrants. In this case, many people who are seeking English as a second language. I'll stop it at this point, but you get the idea of the Prezi at this point. Now you get to see us again. But the idea here is to have an English as a second language platform, again, targeting adults. It's something that we often think about these kinds of language learning tools as someone sort of requires English language, even English as a second language. We often think about young kids as the population. And it's not just a matter of sort of repurposing those tools for an adult population, but really thinking about what are the needs of that population, what's the working style of that population, what's the what are the skills that they're going to come in with, what are the things they're going to want to do, and what are they going to enjoy. And so this was really thinking about that adult audience in a pretty serious way. But building upon what seems like, it's not my area of expertise, but what it seems like a sort of well-researched understanding of literacy and adult literacy. So that's something really important to think about and to look at. I will say, I'll note, again, sort of drawing upon other work to look at. So we started here a project called Xenos, which is now part of the Learning Games Network, which is a nonprofit that spun out of here, and it's a game that focuses on adult literacy as well. Not to say that it does all these things here. I think, in fact, in many ways, the kind of things you're saying here are quite complementary. And it's something that we've worked on with different organizations to provide adult literacy training, English as a second language, for speakers of Mandarin and Spanish, and have had a lot of success. I think there's a lot more work to be done in this space. And I think really thinking about some of these other aspects, as I look down this list here, in terms of the features, there's many things, the majority of these things that we don't do on that platform. And so there's a great sort of way of thinking about an ecology of tools that can sort of help this adult audience.
It's great. One or two more things to add. So you mentioned this relevant and engaging reading content, and I got a little bit more of an idea about that from your use case scenario, but I would love a sample reading. You know, what's the ideal kind of reading for your intervention here?
Yeah, same idea. Like, really great overview, sort of thinking about this across time. It'd be great to sort of dive deep into a couple different places to get a sense of, like, what does this actually mean for a learner sitting down or standing up and doing this. So thinking about a deep dive, again, a deep and narrow sort of view. It doesn't have to be here's what you're going to be doing over the next 20 weeks, but you sit down and here's what it looks like for 5 minutes. This is the kind of reading that you're doing.
Great. We also want to talk about the reward structure as well.
Yeah, I mean, so as we think about a lot of these kinds of learning environments, we want to think about ways that we sort of keep people coming through them and giving them a sense of progress. And I think it's really important to give people good feedback and good indicators that they are making progress and when they're making progress, and giving them feedback for participating, but really for making that progress. But there is the rewards here were sort of around virtual items, which may not be the motivating currency for this adult audience.
It may work for some.
It may work for some, but not for others. So, in fact, in many ways, it's useful to think about what are ways that I can provide multiple different forms of feedback and senses of progress. And so if someone happens to latch on to the virtual currency, great, that person's motivated and it will continue. But for someone else, it may be sort of like the dashboard where it gives them deep numeric data in terms of how they're doing. Really, that's all they need to see. They need to see that progress and to see graphs. That might be another way of sort of using that same data, but sort of presenting it to somebody in a different way. Maybe there's partnerships with real life organizations that you can work out with, where you actually participate long enough and you might get something in the real world out of it. It might be simply about peer feedback and community that might sort of give you a sense of progress. So thinking about multiple different ways that you might be able to give that sense of progress and not relying on one that might be untested.
Last thing to add on this one, I noticed that you had multiple entry points into the content itself. So you had audio components, you had an in-class component, there was some community components. That's something that we like to see.
Yep.
More supportive of multiple different types of learners. Okay, so I'm gonna check the chat here. Sachiko says she would love to look at the program of Xenos. So it's XENOS. Is there still a website around for it?
There is.
I will get that for you.
It's often, I think it's Xenos ISLE, Xenos-ISLE. But if you look up Xenos and ISLE, ISLE, then you'll find it.
Perfect. Great. So should we go ahead and move to the chat? Oops. Remove any web addresses. Okay.
Okay.
Fun with technology.
No web address isn't allowed on this website.
Great. Okay, perfect. Should we move to our shoutouts?
Sure. So these will be a little bit more brief. But staying within that sense of literacy, now we're going to the other end of the spectrum. So this is now literacy for young kids ages 3 to 7. This is a project called Clink by Julian Borelli. I have to show you, I'm gonna bring up a video here.
Yeah, it's a nice pitch.
Which I'll scrub through a little bit, but. All right, so this is the pitch here. Really nice introduction, describing the problem of literacy.
See the tech maybe a minute in.
Yep. Have a nice little animation describing a situation here, and I'm gonna try to get you to the.
There we go.
I'm gonna. Nice little animation, and then we get to see the first sort of glimpse of the technology. And this may, for all I know, this doesn't actually work, and that's okay for sort of a pitch document for this. It looks like it works. It may or may not. It's certainly feasible that it does, but it's a really nice little sort of demonstration for getting what for being able to show what it does. And I think the interesting thing here is that there's lots of literacy software out there, particularly for young kids. I'm going to stop that now. Lots of literacy software out there, particularly for young kids. But I think what this shows is a pretty thoughtful both design and a pretty thoughtful sense of how it builds over time. So it's not just a single activity where you sort of learn letters, but the idea is that you learn letters and then you can progress and you can learn sort of groups of letters. So it was sort of an interesting way of thinking about how you take a sort of an idea that's been done many, many times and do it better, and do it with a nice presentation. I'll add as well.
That's great. One more thing to mention on that is it looks like this participant is still moving through the course. So I didn't see components on assessment and everything yet. So I think they're still working on those components.
Yeah, and it is important to think about those. I think like a lot of people, including myself, we're motivated by the product, but it's important to think about these other things as well, particularly if you're thinking about moving forward on something like this. Thinking about those other components will be really important to its success. I might ask you to talk about this one.
Sure, that's fine. So this next presentation is by, I apologize if I get your username incorrect. It's Gennady Miroshnikov is how I believe you pronounce it. This presentation, if you just scroll up for a moment, is about equality and diversity training. And this is mostly sort of like an online course, but we found the presentation to be pretty innovative, so we invite you to take a look at that. It's an innovative...
We'll do a quick share of it.
Yeah, visual format. So we thought this was a neat way to kind of present the idea.
So we actually don't know how we did this.
It's clearly some presentation engine.
Some presentation engine that allows you to sort of show things being drawn, which I'm assuming that you didn't draw all these things yourself, but although you may have. But it is a nice presentation, and I think this style, when done well, works really well. Sort of a sense of something unfolding over time, describing a scenario here. It's sort of the style sort of really draws you into this real problem here. I think I'll stop it at this point.
Yep. Right.
Yep.
I have one thing to point out actually in this. If you go back to screen share for one more time, the post in response to this I thought was notable. So one thing that was really interesting is that we saw a connection between two participants in our forum. So Anne EV or Anne Ev, I'm not exactly sure, asked if this participant was interested in bringing this to life. So she thinks she may have a mobile platform. So I think this is just one example how your fellow participants and classmates can be a good resource.
Great.
Great. Should we do one more?
One more.
Okay, so this last one is by David Kruglinski.
And we've mentioned David's work before, thinking about ways to really personalize learning, and that's something that I think we've commented on before. Is that really thinking about personalized learning being more than which multiple choice question that you answer, but really thinking about how you recognize things about a person's personality or things they like to do or choices that they make along the way, and trying to make sort of learning feel more personalized in the end, which I think is really including it talks about here detecting different deficits that someone might have as well as things that they like to do.
One thing we noticed in this project is the scope is pretty large, and it's not that David doesn't have some excellent skills to work on this. It sounds like he has the skills to write algorithms that can help detect motor skill difficulties, that he's working on a lot of these things. But when you have a scope that's very large, it can be a little bit hard to focus in on what the real kind of focus of the project is. So
you might think about something that's modular and sort of focus on developing particular modules that you think are the most either your ones you're most interested in or ones you think are most needed at this point in time. But if you sort of take that more modular approach, you might be able to sort of be able to take one piece and bring that to completion, and then sort of move and do that with another piece. I think that's going to be a more successful strategy than sort of like doing 10% of 10 different things. To just do 100% of one thing. And then be able to do that in a way where you can build on other pieces as well. It sounds like it could be sort of part of some sort of platform. So maybe about engaging other people with other modules as well, or building upon existing work that people might have done on other platforms.
That's great. I'm going to just take a quick look at the chat, and we'll go ahead and wrap up. Okay, great. So I just wanted to let you all know that you'll be hearing from us regarding a few sort of end of course details. We're so glad that we got the opportunity to learn from you, and we were really glad to see so many submissions for the live event. I know it was a quick deadline, and you had to work hard to get that work done. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for all your participation in the course, and for showing up today, and for all of you who submitted things to the final presentations, and I know others will be looking at them as they go along and take a look in more depth at the ones that we highlighted today, because there's a lot more to be seen there. Great. Well, thank you so much. Thanks. Bye, everyone. Bye.